Hello, everybody. This is the Hemlock Society of San Diego, Faye Girsh, interviewing an author named Neil Davies, who wrote a very interesting book called Pride and Dignity under his pen name, Alastair Neil. I'm talking to Neil. He happens to be in Spain. Is that right, Neil?
That's correct, yes. I'm in southwest Spain.
Southwest Spain. Is that where you live?
Yes, yeah, we've lived here for 4 years now.
Oh, and how did it happen that you came to be writing a book on end of life and dignitas, or what you call it, dignity?
Well, over the last 4 years, I've lost both my parents, and they were under circumstances that I wasn't aware of, where the doctor could see that there was no hope for either of them individually, and he gave them a severe sedative, knowing that that would end their life. And that was all new to me. I didn't know that. I thought people just passed away peacefully in their sleep and things. So I didn't know that. To me, I interpreted that like a sort of euthanasia. And I had a big debate with my wife about it, who was a senior nurse in the intensive care unit for many years in a local hospital. And she explained it to me, where I was viewing it as euthanasia. She said, no, it's the person is dying, but they're just making the transition from life to death more comfortable and more peaceful. So that was all new to me. So I started looking into it.
Neil,
and then I came across,
what country did your parents die in? Where did this happen?
My mother died in United Kingdom, and my father died here in Spain last year.
So neither one of those legalized euthanasia or physician aid in dying.
Sorry?
Neither country has legal physician aid in dying.
No. But the whole concept, and the whole sort of thoughts came to my mind about it all, and I've never really thought about it. So I started looking into it, and then I came across the assisted suicide issue, and I started looking into that. I wrote to Dignitas and asked about it. I did a lot of research. They were very helpful people, lovely people, gave me a lot of information on their protocols, their ideology, and their procedures and processes. And it was very contrary to what I'd sort of interpreted through the media. They're a lovely group of people, and they're very, very passionate about prolonging life in the first instance, and only if every avenue has been exhausted will they accept somebody for the end of life sort of assisted suicide.
What impression had you had from the media?
Well, from the media, it was like sort of a very bad picture has been painted of Dignitas and all the other organizations, that they were just like a factory process. When somebody's fed up of life, or they're a drain on society, or they're a nuisance to their family, just park them in and they'll see them off. And that's the sort of interpretation I think many people have got. And it's not like that at all. And having discovered the truth, I wanted to actually put it down accurately to inform people that the process is a very peaceful and calm process, and that they are not people who want to see you die. They want to see you live and prolong your life. However, they will help you if all avenues have been exhausted and you're suffering. They will help you to stop your suffering.
So your book is fiction, though. It's a story of a family who uses a service that you call dignity, not dignitas. Can you say a little bit about the story?
Yes, well, I wanted to sort of, it's loosely based around my father and myself. We had a very good relationship. We actually worked together in a family business, and we were quite devoted to each other. And when I lost my father, which was just a year ago now, the emotions were huge. The deep feelings of loss were huge. And I wanted to explore that. And because of his circumstances of his death, where it was almost predetermined, the doctor told us they're going to give him a severe anesthetic and he'll be gone in a short while. So I came home that night and I just, my mind was just running riot. So and then when he did pass away, it was the emptiness and the feelings of loss. And I wanted to sort of build the emotions and feelings of losing somebody close like that under those circumstances or similar circumstances like the assisted suicide. And that was the primary intention. And of course, then the focus became on the assisted suicide angle. And I looked into that very deeply and with the help of Dignitas and did a lot of research with that.
I liked your, in the book, fictionalized, you or the son is very opposed to what your father's telling you or him, or I have to get the pronouns right here. The son is very much opposed to the father's idea that he would go and make himself dead in Switzerland. And they have a
Yes.
wonderful, wonderful dialogue about this, which is very helpful because there's so much misunderstanding, as you say, and opposition in families who don't want to lose a loved one. And yet you make a very convincing case about why your father wants to do this and eventually why you support this.
Yes, yeah. In the book, I wanted to raise the debate that's going on across the world. That some people are opposed to it, some people are for it, and through the characters, I wanted to create the debate and put the points forward from each side. And then, of course, my conclusion, which I hope doesn't influence anybody, because I want people to make up their own mind. But I want them to make up their own mind knowing the facts. And it is facts that I've put in the book, having researched with Dignitas. So I wanted people to know the truth of the process and sort of explore all the points brought up in the debate for the pro-euthanasia and the against euthanasia.
It was interesting that you did not use the religious argument, which many people do. And in fact, later in the book, you made a very convincing argument for atheism.
Yes, yes, I am an atheist, and it's a very deep subject, and in fact, somebody from a similar organisation to yours, but they're based in New Zealand, they communicated with me recently, and their local archbishop has said that suffering and pain is a gift from God.
Hmm.
So
Yes.
I don't go for that. You know?
Yeah, that's right. I'm glad I wasn't giving birth to a child under his jurisdiction. That has been the position of the Catholic Church for a long time. In fact, a new encyclical or something just came out against euthanasia and assisted dying. So they're not very progressive on this subject, but that doesn't mean that the rest of us have to follow that. So the other thing is, I was very impressed about how you talked about the steps that your father or the fictional father went through when you got to Dignitas, when he got to Dignitas, because you never got there, did you? Or, by the way, did you ever get to Dignitas?
No, I've never been there. I've just had a lot of communications with them back and forth, and they were very, very helpful. They supplied all the information, they answered all my questions, and they supplied more information than I even asked for. And you can tell from the communications they're a very compassionate group of people, and they're very caring, and they feel strongly about this cause, and they fight on the world stage for it, which I think is wonderful. Because the governments, religion, and courts who are opposing it, to me, it's mind blowing. I don't see how they can, because when courts, religion, and governments oppose assisted suicide, they are sentencing many people to prolonged suffering and pain. And I just don't see how they can do that. I just don't see the reasoning or the rationale in insisting people continue to suffer. I can't get my head around that.
Well, I've been in this movement over 30 years for the same reason. The outrage that I feel about how dare people have to die that way when they would prefer to die peacefully. Uh,
Gotcha.
yeah. I forgot what I was going to ask you. I've been to Dignitas, been to their quarters there, and I've talked to Ludwig Manelli, who is the founder of Dignitas, who is not a doctor. Did you know that? He's a human rights
Yes.
attorney.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
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 Um, and he, but what I was going to say was, if your parents died in that humane way that they did, I wonder if that was legal in the countries where they died. I mean, it's a matter of doctors taking matters in their own hands and not letting their patients suffer. Oh, excuse me.
Yes. It it's the interpretation of it, isn't it? You know, I mean, whereas this is how it all my book all came about, because I was a bit confused by it. I said to my wife, well, they're giving my mother and father a severe anesthetic, knowing they're not going to wake up from this, and if in a day or so they're going to be dead. And that was my way of looking at it. And as she came back at me and said, no, your mum and at the time, and my father later on, are dying. They're beyond hope, they're beyond help, they're beyond rescue. It's all the doctor is doing is making it more comfortable and peaceful for them to pass away. So
Well,
it's just the way we look at it, really.
I think before this became a big litigious affair and laws had to be passed, most doctors did exactly what your parents' doctors did. And
Mm.
they avoided the end of life suffering by making it quicker and more peaceful for the patients
Yes.
and the family. And now it's lucky if you can find a doctor who will do that.
Yeah.
And if he does do it, it could be considered to be a breaking the law. So it's a
It
very,
could be. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, but I'm very relieved and grateful to those doctors. And in fact, when um, the doctor who gave the anaesthetic to my mother, afterwards I said to him, I'm very grateful to you that you saved my mother from suffering and from pain. You know, I was genuinely grateful to see her just go away just peacefully and calmly, and not in any pain. You know, that was a big, huge relief.
And when you think about that, it's such a simple thing for a doctor to do. And you don't have to
Mm,
transport your mother to Switzerland. And you
mm.
also, by the way, Neil, didn't mention the cost of the services of Dignitas. Could you say something about why you omitted that?
Um, I, well, as I understand it, from what I can gather from the information I've received from Dignitas, it's they do charge a fee to cover their costs, and if there is any surplus, they put it into a fund, and that fund is used to help people who can't afford the full price, or to support them in a battle on the world stage to promote the assisted suicide issue. So,
Right.
I didn't really want to mention the cost of it,
Well, it is important, and well, especially in America, it's a long way. I mean, Dignitas mostly serves European countries, Germany,
Yeah.
England, France, Spain. So, and I guess your parents were Welsh, or anyway, but that's for an American to go, the fee is generally $10,000, which, as you say, supports their costs. And then it's transportation and hotel and that kind of thing, as
Hmm.
your fictional father was so generous in supplying. Uh, but it's an expensive deal, and how much simpler it would be if people could die like your parents died with the help of
Yes,
their own physician.
yes, that's right. Yeah, but the thing with Dignitas is they're not out to make a profit. They do state quite strongly they're a not-for-profit organisation. They just charge to cover their costs. That's all. But it is an expensive thing. But they do, as I said earlier, they do have a fund where some people who can't quite afford the full price to cover their costs, that they will help out with that, as I understand it.
Right. And are you aware that why Switzerland, let me just say it, I guess, that Switzerland has had a law permitting physician aid in dying, not euthanasia, by the way, but physician aid in dying for a long time now. And it's the only country that has such a law that also welcomes foreigners to come and use the law. Not welcomes, but doesn't prohibit foreigners. So even though Swiss people have their own organization where they can get help in dying, they don't have to necessarily go to Dignitas. Foreigners come to Dignitas. So that's been extremely helpful for the rest of the world.
Yes.
And
Yes.
also that there are other organizations in Switzerland have sprung up in addition to Dignitas that do something similar. Life Circle,
Yeah.
for example. Yeah.
Yeah. And Exit, I believe, is another one.
Well, Exit is the one that helps people in Switzerland.
The local people.
Yeah, Swiss nationals. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
So, uh, when has your book gotten a good reception, or have you had opposition to it, or?
Yes, the sales have been good and steady. A press release. I've employed the services of a press release, a PR company, and today they put a release out to all these sort of literary agents and the book reviewers and people like that. So hopefully it's going to snowball now. So, but yeah, the reviews I've had so far have been excellent. You know, people have loved it, and it is a very emotional story, and this is what I wanted it to be, because it is a very emotional issue and a procedure. So, you know, and of course we always remember an emotional story. You know, it sticks in our minds. So, you know, and I hope it's going to come up in book clubs and things, and people can talk about it. And the talk about it, the more familiar they're going to be with this sort of issue, which I think it's going to happen to all of us. So we should all be, you know, aware that this procedure is available if any of us are suffering.
Well, I would have to add a note of protest. You know, why should we have to go to Switzerland? Why can't we do this in our own countries? And to some extent,
Exactly.
in some places we can.
Yeah.
And thank goodness for Switzerland and Dignitas, but it's outrageous to me that we can't just do this in our own beds with our own doctors.
Yes. I
Yeah,
think that the actual issue is gaining momentum throughout the world. And I think more and more countries and more governments are becoming aware of it and receiving more applications through the courts to change the law. And I think, you know, well, I just don't understand how they can oppose it to myself. But I think slowly, bit by bit, country by country, the laws will change.
it's very slow. I've been in this movement for almost 35 years, and you have to have the
Yes.
patience of a saint to continue here. It's just these incremental things that happen that are good that keep you going. And Great Britain is one of the worst.
I know. Yes, there's
Laws
many
have
applications.
been, yeah, laws have been proposed for years now, and it's opposed by the British Medical Association and not the Catholic Church, but the Church of England. Just
Yeah.
it's inexcusable why this is dragging on this way, and sometimes people who take people uh, to Dignitas from England get prosecuted or get. I
Yeah.
don't think anybody's actually been. The
Yeah.
whole prosecutions happen, and there's been guidelines about how you can do this, but still, it's very difficult to do that, even that.
Yeah, I mean, I always use the old analogy that we, we we love our pets, our dogs and our cats, and if we thought they were suffering because they'd had an accident or they've got some disease, we take them to the vets and we do what we call the kindest thing. We put them to sleep. We stop their suffering. Yet our mothers, fathers, brothers, sisters, the law says they've got to stay alive if they're in the same condition, they're suffering, they're in pain. The law says they've got to stay alive and continue to suffer. That to me, I just do not understand.
Well, this is the kind of energy we need in the Right to Die movement. So I hope you link up with some organizations in Spain. If you don't know them, I will send you the information. and
Yes, please.
campaign for this, because that's what it takes, is enough people to say this is outrageous.
Yes.
You know, I don't want to die like this. I want to die peacefully and when the time and place of my own choosing, and not pay $10,000 to have to do it.
That's right. Yeah. I think it should be everybody's fundamental right.
Right.
You know,
And if the Catholic Church doesn't like it and wants people to suffer, that's their choice. It's a matter of choice. And nobody's imposing anything on anybody, but we should have the choice.
yeah, exactly. We definitely should. Yes. The freedom to choose.
Yeah. Anyway, I thank you very much. And I want to promote this again, pride and dignity,
Thank
because those
you.
are two elements of a good death.
Yeah.
And I'm glad you had this wonderful relationship with your wonderful father, because it's certainly depicted beautifully in your book.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Faye.
Thank you very much. And this is Alastair Neil is his pen name, and a book you
Yeah.
can find on Amazon.com. Thanks, Neil, for this interview.
You're very welcome, Faye.